Greetings, and welcome to Beatles Stuffology, where two old friends sit around and talk BS, Beatles stuff, on a track-by-track basis, pretty much for the sake of it. My name is JG McQuarrie, and I'm here with my co-host, Andrew Deacon. Say hi, Andrew.
Hello, how are you?
I'm not too shoddy, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's as we record, it's summertime. It's a lovely day, and I'm stuck in this airless room. Oh well.
Good. Yes, I've forced you to talk about a song on a lovely summer's day. I'm sorry about that.
However, it is a good song, and it is, and I've probably said this before about George's contributions on perhaps on Help, but this is George Harrison's best and most complete song so far.
Yes, it is. I completely agree. We are talking about If I Needed Someone today, as you may well be aware. And yeah, it's really nice to see George kind of develop in this way, right?
It is. I mean, one of the difficult things, though, and this probably sort of maybe picks up on some occasionally have, though, is it is always easier to talk about negative things than positive things. So even though there are lots of really nice things in this, I am also going to pick holes. Now, remember, that doesn't mean that I don't like the song because it is really, really good. But we will come across a few bits as we go through this that yeah, possibly could have been even better. Unfortunately, George does go on to do even better. However, I just think the fact that Georgie, I'm so familiar with him, I'm calling him Georgie now, that Georgie, I've done it again, right, third time lucky, that Mr. Harrison isn't being a whiny, self-obsessed knob on this, who thinks the world revolves around him and him alone, is a massive step forward. So even though the lyrics are fairly bland, it's still a big step forward that the focus perhaps is more on the musicality, and we've got a much more interesting song, and his vocals are better. Not obviously he's still got a way to go, but they are better. And actually, I was reminded of this when reading something the other day about the first album, and because at that point John and Paul wrote a song for him. I forget which one it is now. And Harrison said about that he knows that he didn't sing it very well, but nobody told him how to sing it better. And John Lennon said, well, we gave him a fairly simple song with basically three chords in it because that fitted what he was able to sing at that point. Well, you look at then the trajectory, and again, I can't even say trajectory correctly today, then what we see is a significant development to get here, because this is much more sophisticated in terms of what he's doing. So good on you, George.
Was it? Do you
Hope you
want
have
to
a
know a
bit.
secret?
Oh, quite possibly. Yeah,
Okay.
that has nasal resonance. Yeah.
It sure
This
does.
is his least nasally song
Oh yeah,
by
yeah.
a
This is,
country mile.
yeah. This is definitely his least nasal song. If you compare for the way that he sings, "Think for Yourself," yeah, it's
Yeah.
quite the contrast. I'm going to say I do really like this song. It's again, I think it's a definite step up from Wait, and it's easily yeah George's best song at this point. You're right about the lyric. It's definitely nice to have him singing something which is a bit more present, yeah, a bit less self-pitying, a little bit less whining. Again, it's not the most refined lyric in the world, and that's okay. I think it gets away with it. But there's something quite. It is simple, but there's something quite pleasing in its simplicity. It's not trying to overextend itself. I think in the last episode I mentioned that the lyric and the music don't particularly gel all that well. I don't think it with Weight. I think here they do. I think this is the right lyric for this song. It's not super complicated, but it doesn't need to be. That the simplicity is kind of what allows the lyric to function here. There's a couple of decent lines everybody knows about, carve my number on your wall and expressions like that. But it works really well integrated with this tune.
And it's also an example of George getting involved in some early recycling efforts as well. Because see, we're recycling the birds, But actually, George ends up recycling this song himself. There's a line, "But you see, but you see now I am too much in love." That line effectively gets recycled, not the lyric, but the melody gets recycled in "I want to tell you." So he will actually come back to that and he'll go, "Oh, okay, well, it's probably subconsciously, but it is interesting how that will appear again, that little kind of motif." So George clearly recognised something in it as well. Um, I do think though, and this is where I'm going to start maybe lobbing some some points out here. Does it sound a little dated?
It certainly sounds very 60s, yes. Now, whether you want
Yeah,
to say that qualifies as dated or not, I mean, maybe. It's certainly a very time locked song, and I think I would go so far as to say it's a very 1965 sounding song. It doesn't sound like anything off Revolver, but it doesn't really sound like anything off, oh, I don't know, with the Beatles either. It sounds like this year. You might argue that George is recycling the Birds. I would argue that he's upcycling them, because I think this is better than the song it takes its riff from. But that's a conversation we'll get
yeah,
to shortly.
yeah.
I do definitely think it sounds like, yeah, this is the sound of 1965. I don't know. I mean, when people say dated, is always used as a pejorative, and I don't know if it always is. I don't think the fact that it sounds like the year it was made in is necessarily a bad thing. In the same way that nothing really sounds more 1967 than Sergeant Pepper, but that's because it's kind of the defining album of that year. Sorry, Velvet Underground, it is. It's it's kind of totemic in that sense, and the fact that something sounds like it's made in the year it was made in, I mean, that's fine. It sort of marks its place within the culture of the time it comes from. So I would hesitate to use the word dated, but
Okay,
of its time, 100%, yeah.
let's try this then. The guitar, the jingle jangle, the guitar sounds dated slash of its time,
Yes, yes,
and
100%.
quite weedy almost. I do think it's a little weird that although again maybe not actually within the grand scheme of where George fitted in the pecking order of the band at this point in particular, that the guitar is the weakest part of this. But not only that, but when they get to the, let's call it something like an instrumental break, it's smothered in R's, and there's no opportunity for George to add a bit of depth to his own song, his own guitar work.
Well, yeah, I mean that's because the whole song is based around a drone, and that doesn't give a lot of opportunity for that kind of space for melodic invention, I suppose. It's musically, it's a fairly linear. I nearly said horizontal, but that makes me sound like such a pretentious arse. It's a fairly linear. It's a fairly linear melody. That's fine. I mean, the harmonies are technically good. I think they're a bit much. I think they could be pulled back a little bit. But I mean, they are very, very well put together, and it's clearly. I think it's really clear that a lot of thought has been put into the song in a way that isn't true of all George's previous songs. You can certainly see a huge amount more effort than say something that like the tossed off nature of like "Don't Bother Me," and it's not just George that's putting in the effort here. Like the band are clearly infused with this song, and they're making their efforts. And if they go maybe a little bit over the top with the harmonies, it's not the worst sin in the world, but there's definitely a sense where you can tell everybody's sitting up and taking notice of this song, and I think that's where it gets a lot of its kind of energy or its spark from. Like you can just tell that the band are invested in this, and I really like that about this song.
Well, maybe we'll come back to the harmonies then when we talk about cover versions,
Mm.
because in particular, I think it's worth talking about the Hollies version of this and the Hollies in general, and that's where I think we can pick up that conversation again, because I have opinions, and I don't want to get into them too soon. But what I do want to do then is pick up on something that you've mentioned already about this being based on a drone, because one of the criticisms of McCartney that Harrison himself felt was that McCartney didn't put that much effort into bass lines on songs that weren't his own, and in particular on Harrison's songs. And actually, if you listen to the bass on this, it is mostly just one line repeated over and over and over again. So on the one hand, you might take that as being evidence of, yeah, McCartney not putting in a full shift on. So it is a really, really interesting line. And it's certainly not what you would, even if you were a bass player, it wouldn't be the first thing, even probably the 10th thing you would have come up with about the way that it sort of interacts and counters the melody. But it is repeated over and over and over and over and over and over. But then on the other hand, is that fitting in with the drone element? So is it McCartney being lazy, or is it McCartney being musically astute?
I think it's the second one. I've got to say, I was playing this song with my fella earlier on, who is a bass player, and it is a really interesting approach to the bass line. It's not just tossed off. It could be simpler than this, and it's an interesting little riff that McCartney is playing. It's very unusual in terms of the style that McCartney plays in, and I think he is adapting himself to playing in the style of this song and providing a bass line that works with it. You wouldn't want anything that was too melodic, not like the sort of bass riff that he's playing. It has a nice sort of melody to it, but it's usable all the way through the song, and you wouldn't want something which was too decorative. There are a few McCartney bass lines which are slightly fussy or a little over decorative sometimes. And I think if you ended up with one of those on this song, it would really get in the way of this song. But I think it really works. It's I don't know. I really like it. I hadn't really thought about the bass line on this song until we were kind of prepping for this episode. And like I've mentioned many times, I often play songs through, but having it play through with the bass line there really made it stand out. And it's kind of fascinating. I definitely don't think he's being lazy here. I think he's really found something incredibly effective, and he's working in a mode that we very, very rarely see McCartney's bass lines working in, but I really like it. I think it's incredibly effective.
Serves the needs of the song.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly what it does.
Okay, okay, that's interesting. And again, that's something we'll come back to when it comes to talking about the cover options, because there are certainly quite a few interesting cover options that you can refer to here. It's always interesting to see that development in George, bearing in mind how soon it is that we're going to get I Want to Tell You, for example, and to a lesser extent Taxman, where we get whiny George back. But it's just from in a couple of years, I think his progress is so much more significant even than Lennon and McCartney, and possibly more because he is the Eric Idle of the group, in that he is coming up with these ideas for himself. He's not working with someone else to bounce the ideas off. So he might even be going into studio going, "Hey guys, I've got these ideas. What do you think?" And it would be really interesting to know what the others thought about these at this point. I mean, clearly it was pretty well regarded, because when it comes to the concert for George, for example, once they get some of the early kind of mysticism parts out of the way, it's one of the first George Harrison songs from the Beatles era that gets played, and I think that's significant. I think it's also significant that it's Eric Clapton who sings it, which is as much as anything to say this is a significant piece of work.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, one never wants to sort of overly read into the minds of other people, but again, I think you can tell what the band thought of this song by the effort that they put in. Like everything I was saying about McCartney's bass line isn't the work of somebody who's just whatever. It's somebody who's really thought through what's going to work for this song. And I think that's sort of generally true all the way through. I think Ringo's doing, again, really, really good work here, really in support of the song. And there's some really nice little percussion pieces here. It's not flashy. It's not one of the songs that anybody's necessarily going to look at and go, oh yeah, like it's one of Ringo's like standout tracks. But again, you can hear him putting in the effort here. There's just so much great stuff going on, and I think it's so obvious that this is well regarded by everybody who's involved in it. I think it's let down a little bit, the song, by the way that it is kind of produced a bit, which is not really to criticize George Martin and stuff, but the original version of this song on Rubber Soul has really massive stereo separation. Like everything is either over to the left or to the right. And it sounds odd, especially if you listen to it on headphones. And the re-release, the 2023 Red album, greatly corrects this. But it does it at slight expense of making McCartney's bass sound a bit thuddy and a bit ploddy, and that's unfortunate. So it fixes one problem, and it does sound really nice with everything sort of properly positioned in the stereo picture. But for some reason, I think basically it's just a bit high in the mix. But McCartney's bass line sounds a wee bit sort of thumpy, a bit tubby, and that's unfortunate. But I'm assuming that I'm not doing a deep dive into sort of production techniques or anything, but I'm assuming that basically we ran out of track and had to do a lot of bounce downs is the reason for it, especially with all those harmonies. But it's slightly unfortunate for the song. But beyond that, yeah, just like everyone's making an effort, and you especially in George songs, like we haven't really seen everyone quite pulling together in the same way.
So I think a sign of how this song was regarded was by how many contemporary covers there are. So I want to give a shout out to for 66 Hugh Masekela cover of it, which is really good. I mean, I think it works because Hugh Masekela, as well as being a vocalist, was a trumpeter. So you are getting something different straight away, but you're also getting something different in the character of his voice as well. And I found that particularly interesting because my associations with Hugh Masekela come from the early and mid 1980s. He was a name that cropped up on John Peel's show on the BBC in the UK reasonably regularly, but then also Graceland as well. And I did buy and love Graceland as an album. So it was then interesting to hear him take on this in such an interesting way, and I would strongly recommend that people have listened to it. And the Kingsman, also from 66, just feels like a copy. But the one that we need to talk about is the version that came out in 65, or was it early 66? But it was really contemporary.
It's the 3rd of December 1965.
Right, so it comes out on the same day as the album, basically, which is the Hollies. And do you have an opinion about the Hollies? Not just not the cover version, but do you have an opinion on the Hollies?
I can't claim that I'm a massive fan of them. I think it's very easy to see why they were popular, but they don't really do it for me, if I'm honest. It's this cover version is kind of a lot of what I kind of think of the Hollies, which is it's all right. And that's kind of what I think of the Hollies. They're all right, but I wouldn't ever really get excited. I can't ever think of a time when I've thought, I think I'll listen to the Hollies. like if they come up or
No.
they're on something, I will definitely not run screaming from the room, which is as high a compliment as I can offer anyone. But
Well,
I don't think much of them sort of beyond that really.
I think for people of our generation, they would know them from He Ain't Heavy,
Yeah,
He's My
a song I
Brother, and
hate.
especially
That's
and
that's the exception. That would send me running from the room. Oh
and,
god, I hate that song so much.
and what's the other one? Is it The Air That I Breathe?
Yeah.
I think now I
What's
there
your
are there
opinion
are
of the
some
Hollies, Andrew?
well there are some people whose opinion that I respect who talk about them as being really good, innovative, blah 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 blah. And every time I listen to them, I just think I'm missing something.
Yeah.
I'm really missing something. And Graham Nash went on to do big things with Crosby, Stills, and to an extent Neil Young as well. Um, but I just I struggle with it. I really don't like the vocals on it at all. And they make a weird decision or a weird edit at the end where if I needed someone is needlessly repeated very quickly. And to be honest, the whole thing is rushed. It sounds like they're singing it in a hurry, like someone in the recording session needed to get to the toilet very, very quickly. And but I just don't get it. To me, they're we talked about McCartney's bass line, and I was quite keen to bring that up because I wanted to find out your view, and your view was very much it serves the needs of the song. Now, I think they're a prime example of thinking that the harmonies make up for deficiencies in songwriting, and a lot of their songwriting wasn't their own. I think they use these three-part harmonies and people go, oh, wow, aren't they amazing? But much like with other artists, they then overlook the fact that a lot of the songs that they are performing just are quite badly written in places, or that they're not polished. They're good for a part, and then you hear something really clunky within it. But don't worry, there's a three-part harmony, therefore it's really good. The Beatles, I've said this before, it seems like most decisions they make are about serving the needs of the song. But it feels like with the Hollies that, oh, we can harmonize. So we do lots of harmonies and that will make up for everything else. And, interesting. I would make an exception. There's a song that they bring out, I think in 67, called King Midas in Reverse. Rubbish title. But it's a Graham Nash written song. And it's actually really good because it feels like there's a bit of love poured into it. But the fact that they didn't do as well as some of their previous songs led to them going back to more standard stuff. And by 1969, they're doing Dylan covers. And you just think, sorry, I'm almost on rant territory. But actually, this then sort of links in with something that a correspondent mentioned in the last episode, who was writing in from the Netherlands, because they released a couple of Dylan songs as singles in Germany, but not in the UK, and they didn't really do very well. They did one of my favorite Dylan songs, "I'll Be Your Baby Tonight," but it's just really, really weird, and especially Dylan song done with three-part harmonies, just. By 74, they're doing Springsteen covers, which are quite early doing Springsteen covers. And I have to say, if you want an absolute blast, you have to listen to their cover in 1990 of Purple Fucking Rain. It is, can you imagine?
I think I'd rather not if it's all the same.
Imagine Purple Rain being covered by a singer who cannot pronounce purple correctly. I mean, anyway, but
Good rant.
if I
Good
needed
rant.
if I needed someone is particularly hilarious because Graham Nash, as Graham Nash is wont to do, got himself in an absolute tizzy because he thinks that it was that they had a run of top 10 singles that was ended by this, and they then went on to have some more top 10 singles straight after because he thinks the comments made by Harrison and Lennon about how bad their cover was stopped it selling as many. And I love it when Graham Nash gets wound up because he can be really arsey
Oh
about
yeah.
things at times. Oh yeah, absolutely. And actually, maybe Graham, maybe it just wasn't actually very good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it exactly. It's just not very good, and I've got to say I'm on Lennon and Harrison's side on this one. It's like you said, it sounds rushed, but also it kind of sounds like it's been recorded in a tin bathtub. I don't know. There's something very sort of dead acoustically about it. It doesn't have that sparkle. Like you can say what you like about the 12th string Rickenbacker riff that the song kicks off with in the Beatles version, but it's kind of sparkling. It's kind of light, and it kind of draws you into the song. There's none of that lightness of touch in the Hollies version, and particularly I think that's the thing that they miss as much as anything else. Like it's competent, if you want to say that. It's like nobody's off key or off beat or whatever, but that's all it is. It's just competent. There's a sort of almost delicacy to the way that the Beatles version is constructed that allows it to function well as the song. And some of I mean, it all comes back to we serve the song. That's always the TLDR of it. But it is a delicate process, and that process is just swamped out by the Hollies version. There's no delicacy to the way it's constructed at all. And you're 100% correct when you said, oh, we'll just throw in some three-part harmonies because that that compensates for everything. Yeah, absolutely. But you're missing the point. There is something delicate within the song that allows the construction to come through. George has quite a light voice at this point, and that lightness really helps this song as well. But that's again absent in the Hollies version. It's just everything about the Hollies version is inferior. And yeah, sorry, Graham Nash, if that's too hard for you to take, but it's true. It's just not a terribly inspired or interesting like cover version. And especially if you like I'm saying it sounds like it's been recorded in a tin bathtub, but if you compare it to the Kingsmen's version, and like the Kingsmen, not known for their audio sophistication, I think it would be fair to say, but it's quite a fun version. It's quite entertaining. I enjoy their version, and I definitely enjoy it more than the Hollies version.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, I would much rather talk about the loving version that Eric Clapton plays at the concert for George.
Mm.
And let's face it, I don't normally say positive things about Eric Clapton because he's Eric Clapton.
It's a good
So
reason.
it must be pretty good if I'm able to say that.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I suppose we have to like directly talk about the birds here as well, right? Because we have to talk about the bells of Rimini, um, which the riff is mostly lifted from. Um, Earlier on, I sort of referred to it as upcycling, and yeah, I'm okay. I'm gonna ask you a question that you just asked me, which is, what do you think? What do you think of the birds?
I well, yeah. Well, I think there are quite a lot of bands who are around at that time in the 60s who are I think they're just in the shadow, aren't they? And I think this is another band that's in the shadow. And I think there are people who like bands like these who try really, really hard to build a case of why they were better, bigger, more innovative, and so on and so forth. But they're just not the Beatles. And the fact that talking about how the Hollies were doing Dylan covers in '69. Well, the Byrds were doing Dylan covers in '65. So, and this is a Pete Seeger song that you're referencing now, anyway, isn't it? So it's a version of someone else's. So there isn't that originality. There might be some innovation in terms of what they're doing, but there isn't that originality, and I think that always lends some problems. I tried to get into some Graham Parsons for a while, kind of did, but at least that led to listening to some Linda Ronstadt, which is never a bad thing. And of course, you've got the Graham Nash link with David Crosby, being in the Byrds for a bit. Actually, there's oh, what's his name? There's a Roger McGuinn cover of If I Needed Someone from, I don't know, about 2000, I think, which is wonderfully average. Um,
Yes, it is.
so things have gone a bit full circle there. The Birds. I wouldn't turn them off if they came on a 60s channel in satellite radio in the father-in-law's car if driving somewhere in America. But that's about as much of an opinion as I can muster.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I'm very similar myself. I kind of find them boring. I mean, even their cover version of you know, yeah, that version that is really just nothing, right? It just kind of drifts away. I'm aware that it exists, the Roger McGuinn version, but it's just kind of, I don't know, nothing. I don't know. I've never really been able to get on board with the Birds. They're all right. They are obviously profoundly influential in my other, big musical love, which is REM. But beyond that, I don't really have a great deal to say about them. I don't find them terribly interesting, and I definitely think that if I needed someone, is a much more interesting song than the Bells of Rimini.
Yeah, just on a okay, that was mispronounced. Pete Seeger mispronounced it. I believe from my Welsh background that it's meant to be a Romney, but
Okay.
well, no. It's not a criticism. I believe you are correctly pronouncing the name of the song as written by Pete Seeger, but he was an American who was taking inspiration from, I think, a Welsh poet. And it's understandable to look at how a word is spelt and to completely mispronunciate it.
Well, yes, yes. As somebody who lives in Scotland, and there are many Gaelic names here, which non-Scottish people will pronounce as they would were it an English word when it's clearly not.
Mulgai.
Yeah, that's the one.
Oh,
Good old
Milngavney.
good old Bellingavi. Yes, yeah, my guy. So I
Yes.
do have a degree of sympathy with that. Yes.
Yeah. So that's 60s chat here on Stuffology FM. Today we've been dissecting the Hollies and the Birds, and coming up next time we'll be talking and so on and so forth. Yeah, yeah. It's a nice sunny day, and I'm looking out on the garden. Are we nearly done, sir?
I think we are nearly done. Give me a score, and we'll let you go out and play in the sunshine.
Yay, go on the swings and the paddling pool. Because I'm in a good mood, I'm going to give this a Georgie 7.
Georgie 7, lovely. I'm going to give it 7.5. I think. Kind of.
Ooh,
I was going to give it a 7 as well, and then as we've been talking about it, I've decided to give it an extra half mark because that's the sort of exciting, rebellious individual I am.
yeah, take that, Crosby and Nash.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Some podcast you've never heard of and will never listen to has told you your place.
yeah. Take that and choke on your millions. In fact, which one of them is David Crosby dead now?
Yeah, I think he is.
Yeah, okay. It's just the other three that's the live. Right, okay, good. Anyway, that's a tight professional ending.
Yeah, I think so. Good. You can really get a hold of us. You can contact us by email. We are Beatles Stuffology. We are on the Shattered Remains of Twitter at Beatles_ology. And we are Beatles Stuffology on Instagram. You can also find my blog at www.jgmcquarrie.scot, where I write about music and TV shows and films and whatever I fancy. Please like, rate, and review us on whatever podcatcher you're using so that more people can find the show. How exciting! Next episode, we get to wrap up Rubber Soul. We have to run for our life. And as always, we hope you're going to join us for it. But until then, keep listening.